Four, three, two, one. We're live. Jeremy Welch, CASA HODL. How you doing, man?
Doing well. How's it going?
Great to see you. How are things?
They're good. They're good. It's been a fun week. We shipped a lot of stuff last week and a couple big announcements. This crazy tweet from Jack. So it's been fun. It's been a fun week, man.
So we talked before advancing Bitcoin. You were coming to speak here. I asked you to join us at Bitcoin and Blockchain London. Then we met the week of advancing Bitcoin, the same week of the Lightning Network Trust Chain. Lots going on in the same week. You came, you spoke about LNTC and HODLNet, and lots of people at the meetup, around 40 or 50 people. We got full room, and we got great feedbacks. People really enjoy your presentation. They have lots of questions. And I say to people, CASA is going to be it. And voila, like Jack Dorsey endorsement. Now he's running a CASA node. Lots of channel being open with Jack. Lots of talk. Pretty insane week, isn't it?
It's insane. Yeah. It's been a lot building up over time, and we've got a lot of stuff coming the rest of this year too. So we're just excited. I mean, I think there's always a question of reception, and as you design, as a company, and you think through design, and you're building towards something that you think is going to be well received, and you hope that will be impactful for the community. But when it actually is, it's a great feeling, and there's a lot of work. There's a lot of things behind the scenes, and the team has worked insanely hard, lots of all-nighters to get to this point. So it's great to see the reception, because that just keeps everybody driving. And I would say, like, a lot of people don't realize how much it means to a lot of the team whenever they do see retweets, or they do see people that are excited about it, because that's what fuels us, right? It's like, it's not the money. We are not doing this because it's an easy way to make money. We're doing this because it's necessary to build a freer, more open world and get away from some of these problems that we're facing.
Yeah, it seems like Jack has been not only endorsing, but really like full on and with Bitcoin, like with the Tip and Me app that has been released recently. Like, super cool, quick, easy to use application. The fact that he's like, Satoshi, based on Satoshi, is like not too demanding for people. Like, people can just, click and just donate few Satoshi. So especially people that have Bitcoin can, share with people that just started, some newbies, some Satoshis, so that people can try. I think that will get a lot of traction. We'll get a lot of people to try Bitcoin for the first time. I think that will be a very important step. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's good. I think that Tip and Me is centralized, and I think that there are some challenges around that, right? Like, we want there's a few other projects out there that we want to make sure that people understand, and the reason why we built the CASA node is trying to make it as easy as possible for people to run an independent Lightning instance. Anything to get people started is good, but the trade-offs need to be clear, and the UI needs to be clear that it is dependent and it's not, full Lightning. So we're trying to push further and further down the side, make it easier and easier, and the more we can do, the better. So,
did Jack reach out to you to say thanks?
Say what?
Did Jack reach out to you after it receives the CASA node? And
Jack's a busy guy, and we barely expected to hear anything at all. I mean, much, even like a tweet. We just knew that he was a fan and sent one over, and we're thrilled to see him engaging and learning and really digging in. So
that's great. All right, so we're going to stream for about, we're going to ask you some questions for about 30, 45 minutes, and then I'm going to leave some time at the end for some of the YouTube people that just joined the chat for some additional questions. So before we start, usually give a quick overview of what we're doing here in London, how we started. So I started about a year plus ago with Bitcoin and Blockchain London. When I started basically because I realized that in such a big city like London, there was not a proper Bitcoin community, or there wasn't no Bitcoin community at all, for that matter. There was a lot of altcoin and, coin that I was not interested to. So I tried to get people around that with, Bitcoin and blockchain classes first. So those were in person, kind of standard classes, a little bit too passive for people. So we move into like the Bitcoin debate in person. So I'll lay out an argument, and people come to debate the argument. And that's where really the meetup kind of picked up. And for like few people, like 3 or 4 people down in a basement, we're now like 1,000 members. We crossed the 1,000 member mark just the week of advancing Bitcoin.
Awesome.
And yeah, and a lot of people keep joining, and spun off from that, we start this new project where we invite people that are working in Bitcoin or on startup to come to speak at the meetup. Or and the last things that we just started is the YouTube channel. We have Giacomo Zucco first, then we have Federico Tenga from Chainside, and lastly we have Mario Gibney from Blockstream. So now we're going to have you, and then next we're trying to get Nicolas Derrier. We agree, and then just waiting for Nick to hear from Nick. So that's pretty much it. So for people that are in London, come and join us. I put the link to the meetup below. Just click and join us. So starting with you, Jeremy, a little bit of background that I got on the internet. You studied political philosophy at Duke University, about 10 years building startups. Start a company, I think it's called what's called Invite Media, which got bought by Google in 2010. Work at Google as a product specialist for a year or so. Give us a little bit, an overview on how you started, and then we're going to talk about how you started with Bitcoin and how you get into CASA.
Yeah, sure. So I studied, those are all right. I studied political philosophy. So for Invite Media, I was not the early founder. I was an early employee. I learned from some early guys that really sharp, Nat Turner and Zach Weinberg. They went on after Invite Media, they went on to start a company called Flatiron Health, which they just sold last year for like $2 billion. And there's like a little mafia from the Invite Media crew of different people that have gone and start companies. So we all learned a lot from that first experience. Worked at Google for a little while, learned a ton about how Google operates, how the internet works. I think that also was kind of formative for me in setting up CASA, understanding that the internet is an advertising-based internet. And then went back to school actually and finished up at Duke because I had dropped out to go do all of that, and went back and finished up and graduated in 2014. Still political philosophy, and then and actually did a Duke Bitcoin conference with Matt Carollo. And so, yeah, I mean, that kind of leads up to the last few years have been a few startups, and one of which ended up, being CASA. And then this is just, it's exploded from there.
Great. And walk us through not too long, but like step by step, how the first time you heard about Bitcoin, when did you realize that it was the thing you should focus on? How did you transition to work exclusively on Bitcoin?
Yeah.
And how the concept of CASA came about?
Yeah, I've been around for a while, but more kind of privately, and I learned about it after I went back Duke. So it was 2010 when we got bought. I was around Google through 2011, early 2012. I took some time off and just reading a bunch, and then I went back to school. And during that period where I took some time off and I was reading a ton, I went through the financial crisis. So I was in New York City during the financial crisis, and learned a ton then, and had a lot of questions as to how the global capital system works. And so whenever I had a bit to take off, I started digging in, reading a bunch of books, and took a bunch of classes when I went back to Duke around political philosophy, around the kind of global financial system, how things worked. And it was around that period when I first heard about it, when I got into it, when we put on this Duke Bitcoin conference. And then I was exclusively working on Bitcoin. So I didn't start, after all of that, I didn't start a Bitcoin-focused company, but I was working on a separate company, and we ended up like shifting into this business because we kept seeing gaps. We kept seeing areas that it seemed obvious to myself and some other members of the core team that something should exist in this space. And more, we kept hearing, that things weren't being built in the way that we thought. So we decided to start building kind of systems and the way that we think, well, they should be designed, and then that took off. And that's kind of led to kind of where CASA is today, towards this sovereign computing push and everything else we're doing.
Did you met Matt as part of when you start to hear about Bitcoin to learn more, or you knew Matt before? And
Matt was I didn't know Matt directly. Matt was at UNC at the time, and when we went to put on this conference, and we were trying to find other people in the area that knew what was what, Matt was at UNC, and I was at Duke, and we actually brought him over to talk to a Duke professor, Cam Harvey, who's been teaching one of the longest running cryptocurrency classes now. And Matt literally sat in a room with him for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and just did this massive overview. And Cam, after that meeting, that was the meeting that like Cam was like, holy shit, this is going to be huge. And that's how Cam started doing those, his classes. And it's one of the longest running kind of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency focused classes at any school, any university around. And Cam was this guy that was like, he was editor for the Journal of Finance. Like he's not he's a big name guy in finance circles and in business school circles. And it was awesome to see that. But so I met Matt during that period, and then we did that conference together, and we've been friends ever since, and we still fight during basketball season because Duke and UNC have quite the rivalry.
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to hear Matt speaking. He actually came before you speak. We had meetup, one of my meetup. We have Matt coming, talking about Better Ash. Very interesting. Lots of people show up. Lots of questions. It's always very interesting to hear from him. Cool. So you mentioned that you were in New York City during the financial crisis. I myself was there as well, so I've been in New York City for a while actually. So I kind of can relate with what you're saying. Like during the recession, Bitcoin came out, and it seems like almost at the perfect time. As usual, technology show up exactly the moment of need. So related to that, how much do you think the financial crisis has been a catalyst for the development and growth of Bitcoin? Do you think if the financial crisis would not happen, would Bitcoin have developed the same way? And I'm asking this because it's funny that you've mentioned about the financial crisis, because I'm the strong proponent that Bitcoin is Bitcoin because it came out at exactly the right time. We were in need of a plan B if the current system was not able to support us anymore. So
yeah. I mean, I think the answer is that I wouldn't say that it like met at the financial crisis exactly or was directly inspired. I think, and this is just kind of my own conjecture, my own indication. What frequently happens is that Bitcoin's been in development for a long time, and a lot of other cryptocurrencies for decades were Hashcash and on down have been in development for decades. And then I think that leading up to the financial crisis, people have recognized that what's happening with the global central banks just continuing to print money is going to result in a disaster. We're kicking the can down the road. People have realized this for a long time. People have been making calls. A lot of times they're shouted down in kind of public circles, but there have been groups that have been making calls. So I think of it as, people have been working towards this for a while. It was just the most recent financial crisis was a catalyst in the sense that it made the situation a little more urgent, because it provided another example and another very painful example for anybody that was building, for Satoshi Nakamoto to say, to the point to where he set up the Financial Times, right, quote right in the front of
on the Genesis blog.
Yeah. So I think that's like a really good indicator of that he was doing it directly from that. I think that he would have built it anyway if the financial crisis hadn't happened, but the financial crisis happening probably moved it along faster and then just provided that much more of a spark.
Yeah, because people kind of realize, holy shit, we do not have a plan B if things goes to shit.
Yeah, that's right.
So I asked this question related to this. I asked this question also to Giacomo, and he had a very good response. Let me ask you, and then I'll tell you what Giacomo said, and then I want to hear yours.
Yeah.
So I asked him if he ever feared that Bitcoin might displace traditional finance at a rate faster than expected, in a way that possibly Bitcoin is not mature or is lacking the supporting infrastructure to acquire the entire financial system, and hence the possible dramatic consequences. And what he said is like he is concerned about, and he made a comparison with internet when it first came out. When email came out, he said post office was actually working quite well. Like we didn't have a problem of communication. Right. It just improved the situation. Here we're running against time because there is sign of degradation as we have seen in 2009. So what's your take on that? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that Bitcoin still has a way to go in terms of resilience. I think we're already at a place where it's incredibly strong, but it still has a ways to go. I would say that I am confident at this point, and I don't think I'd be building CASA if I weren't, that it is resilient enough that if there was a massive financial failure, that Bitcoin would pick up majority of the slack. I am confident in that. And part of that is the incentives would spike in terms of fixing a lot of problems and increasing node count and increasing some of these other pieces that kind of make Bitcoin resilient. Right now, some of those drivers are there. And so we're seeing gradual adoption, but similar to the last financial crisis being a spark to maybe get Satoshi to like get his shit together and get it out the door, it might be another spark. And I don't really believe, I do believe that almost all real growth scenarios happen. It's trial by fire. And although in the case of like a post office and email, the post office still existed, but a lot of the data that was being sent in email, it just like grew tremendously, and the amount of information that, a lot of in early kind of postal volume, the amount of information that we're sending period has increased rapidly. The amount of information we were generating with computers and even printers and fax machines, right, increased dramatically. So it's just like it's overloading certain existing channels. And then, and I would even look at telephone lines and fax lines, et cetera, as kind of the more of the bottleneck that was kind of being broken by email. So I think it will survive, and I think is in a place to where it could take on the entire system. It wouldn't be without major growing pains, but I'm confident in kind of the space that we're in now.
Yeah, and also the fact that the majority of the projects are open source, if not all of them, obviously can have major contribution from anyone from the community that is capable of helping if things will go south. So I see your point on that. So always on the same line to internet, growing and comparison with Bitcoin. So similar to what happened with internet integrating with banking in the early 90s and the creation of online banking, which we didn't have before, do you think we're going to see an integration point of traditional banking with Bitcoin? And I've been following a lot Blockstream and what they're doing with Liquid and similar projects. And it seems like they're giving an opportunity for that point of integration. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I think it's adapt or die, right? I really do think it is. It sounds kind of aggressive, but we're just at a point again where if you view Bitcoin as just a computing system and not even as a financial system, that it is really the incentive structure and software and everything is the most resilient of just about anything out there. And as a result, I think it is going to kind of eat everything in its path. So you have to find a way. It's like trying to maintain a business without somehow integrating into search and Google and or similar to in the heyday of Facebook. And not having any kind of social channel or social communication. Every single brand now has like a conversation with their customers, and it's just changed the way that everything is done. And so it doesn't mean that Bitcoin will outright replace every single thing and every company will die, but it just means that they'll adapt.
It's like Kodak when Nokia came out with pictures from the phone. And it's like, okay, we didn't do anything about that. We are Kodak. We can survive. And sure enough, they're no longer around. Okay, moving on to the next. Like you always talk about self-sovereignty, and also during the meetup in our presentation, you talk about self-sovereignty. Define for people what do you mean by that, and what do you think is so important, and how Bitcoin and CASA can help achieve that.
Sure. So sovereignty just means control. It also means responsibility, but it's ultimately about control. And what we're really talking about is data sovereignty. So individuals should have personal control of their data. We've moved to a world to where the incentives have kind of started to suck that data in these centralized systems, and users don't really have any control over it. And that's why we've had these major leaks. We've had major issues at Facebook and others. It's also created a kind of like surveillance nanny state. And ultimately, the solution around this is just giving, for those that want it, giving customers more control over their data. I think long term, that'll actually become actually a benefit to most corporations and corporate structures. And countries, I think with GDPR and others, the hurdle to complying and holding user data is going to get higher and higher and higher, and that these things are just going to be stacked to be able to support situations where the client holds a lot of their data themselves, and then they'll have encrypted backups in different places. So yeah, I mean, backing into that again, sovereignty is just about control and responsibility, and it's not just control; it's actually the responsibility that comes with that, and kind of self-direction, self-determination, being able to choose what's best for you. And if you have control over your data, you have this data sovereignty personally, then that's a good thing, and people can make their own determination as to what's best for them, for their community, and in their life.
Yeah, it's also a question of the increasing cost of securing data when the data is centralized. And I've been looking recently at the stats of hacking for major corporation, and in the last few years, it's been rising steadily. So at some point, they have to figure out a way to either find an alternative to distribute the data or use one of these platforms to, not having a single point of failure, basically. Because
and there's a weird mixed incentive too. If you are one of 100,000 or 10 million, or in Facebook's case, one of 1 billion users, then Facebook doesn't care about you, right? If one user has a bad experience, 1 out of 1 billion is not a huge error rate for them. So they end up building systems that are just not good for general human experience and respect for humans. And from that perspective, you need something that feels a little bit more local, a little closer, a little more focus on the individual, and we think that what we're building towards is exactly that.
Great. Also, during the presentation of my meetup, you spoke about the fourth wave of computing, which I find very, very interesting, and how we're transitioning from mainframe computing to distributed computing.
Yeah.
As I was thinking through that, and all the layer 2 applications that are being built like Lightning, this idea that you described of the impenetrable fortress, the Bitcoin network. But what we need to make sure, and I wanted to know what you're doing at CASA. What's your take on that? So make sure that the instances of message submission to main chain remains limited and small, or we have alternative for data compression, which will avoid the risk to clog the Bitcoin main chain again, and then going back to the scaling debate that we have like a year or so. How you guys are you guys looking at that? Do you have a view on that?
Yeah. I have I have a view that I've been challenged by a lot of people on this, but I actually don't think on-chain compute is that important. And so I think that we're going to end up looking back and thinking this whole debate was kind of silly. Because if you can look at, if we're building all these nodes, and as soon as the experience happens that like my node can talk to your node and we can have a direct peer-to-peer relationship, we don't need to communicate on chain. On chain is for whenever you need the like most resilient possible method of communicating, and most often across very long distances and very hostile environments. And so there's this direct kind of node to node, home to home, person to person connection that can happen, that we need to start building applications for that. Lightning is a perfect example of that. Lightning is this implementation of doing a direct connection while still using Bitcoin as a foundation for security. But there will be other instances of connecting kind of node to node, peer to peer. And that's what I like, what I'm articulating is for this distributed computing world that we can head into. And there's a lot of experiences that just haven't been built yet, where that could be possible. And it shouldn't matter whether you're routing through a satellite or through fiber or through a mesh network only in your neighborhood. There's a whole untapped wave of just these like smaller peer-to-peer, node-to-node, non-on-chain compute experiences. And that's so what we're interested in, and I think this is why we get kind of grouped in a weird place, is that we're interested both in the Bitcoin and Lightning on-chain, executed experiences, building for broader experiences, or, even potentially across other chains, as long as they're supporting this model of distributed computing and self-controlled computing and self-sovereign computing, and actually having a node in the home and having direct key management and encryption. And there will be, again, more that comes out across these like direct peer-to-peer connections.
Yeah, I see your point. I still think there is sort of like a trade-off between the security risk of relying more on application built on Bitcoin versus, relying only on the Bitcoin network and then risking of clogging it. So
yeah, but the point there is that like the amount of data or information that actually needs to go on Bitcoin is actually not huge. It's a small fraction of the overall computing that will happen.
Yeah.
Again, on-chain compute should not be as big of a deal as everybody's making it out to be. And we should have distributed compute. We should have local computing that happens in your home or your office, and then we communicate that via encrypted channels. And once you do the compute, then you can communicate the results. And there will be some shared compute and some on-chain compute, but it will just be a smaller fraction of what people are thinking it's going to be.
Cool. All right, let's talk about CASA a little bit. So why I'm so into CASA? So I think I thought for several years that one of the most critical issue for Bitcoin is the problem of custody. And I know because I see it firsthand, like, people coming and telling me like, I lost all my Bitcoins because I lost my key or got hacked, or, all sorts of things that can happen when you have like a single private key and you don't store it in the way you should be. So, without going too much into the details of how multi-signature work and how CASA work, give us an overview on how to start with CASA, what problem does it address, and why people should go for a CASA node.
Sure. So CASA really started as kind of two parts. One was the actual node, and then we realized that the node was challenging to build if you didn't have good encryption and good key management. And so we really doubled down on the key management portion first, and we're investing around the node side, but they work together. And the key management portion itself, everything that you're doing on this new encrypted kind of fourth wave internet, it should be encrypted. Bitcoin is built where you're managing private keys, and those private keys give you access to your accounts. And but the management of private keys is a hard thing. So Keymaster is our iOS and Android app. that is now available that we are focused on, or what we've built and what we've simplified is multi-sig, which is the ability to use multiple keys to secure an account instead of using just one. And the reason you'd want to do that is because of potential security weaknesses and also accidents, right? So say you have one key, and that's the one key to your account, your Bitcoin account, that's holding all of your Bitcoins. And there's a fire at the house, right? And the fire wipes out the key. Well, now your Bitcoin's gone. But if you have keys spread across multiple locations, and you have keys that are on multiple types of devices, and you can protect yourself, again, by using this kind of multi-signature setup. Multi-sig is hard to do, so Keymaster is built to be a broad key manager, but its focus right now, again, is on multi-signature situations primarily. And then the node comes into play because you actually want to validate a lot of the data and a lot of the transactions that you're actually executing. And what validation means is that instead of trusting a cloud provider like Facebook or like Google to tell you that, like, hey, I actually did send this email, or hey, this is the real person that you're trying to connect to, you want to be able to validate that locally and do it yourself and not rely on this outside company. So we summarize what that looks like in practice. Is a node device, CASA node in every home, and Keymaster in every pocket. So every pocket has an iOS device or an Android device, and we'll have a Keymaster app for all those. I mean, they're already live on the App Store today. And what we launched just last week is we've shifted the model a little bit, and instead of just buying a singular device, what you're really buying is a sovereignty package. It's sovereignty as a service. So we created a situation where for every price point, including totally free, you can start interacting with this kind of like sovereign tool set of key management and running a node. The different price points, silver is free to start, but you pay kind of as you go based on some transactions and recovery stuff that you need. But you can start with multi-sig, which is 2 of 3, and there's a mobile, singular mobile key, and you get access to both the iOS and the Android app from that. And then you can bump up to gold level, which has a package. It's literally the best package for sovereignty, period, and to like opt into being a part of this world and being a part of the revolution. We tried to make the best deal out there, period. And when you look at it as a whole, again, you're actually getting, we're operating it at kind of a loss, but it's like right at break even. But now with the gold package, you get a node. So you get the actual CASA node. You get a hardware wallet included. We also have a secret product that we're announcing later this week that I can't speak to just yet, but there is another surprise that's coming out that will be included in that. And you get the key manager, Keymaster, right? So you get all of those all in one package plus support, and to make sure everything is working properly. And then if you want to integrate other stuff with that, then there are 2 tiers above that, which are really the actual premium multi-sig setups and much more high-touch service. It feels kind of like a private bank. But there's a 3 of 5 key shield is what we call it. It's the best multi-sig possible for an individual or a small team. And that's either at the platinum level, which is about an $1,800 price point per year, or the $5,000 level, which is diamond. And that's the absolute best. It includes like multiple devices and a lot of kind of team-based interactions or family-based. Like if you have, you're a I don't know, a high-powered lawyer or something, and you've got a bunch of Bitcoin, and then your husband or wife actually has also some, want them to have access to the account, then you can get that set up and have a shared account there, and that's only at the kind of top tier level. So overall, we're trying to build this way that at any price point, and you can upgrade over time as you get more used to this stuff, you can get started and kind of opt into this new world.
Yeah, you also, during the meetup, you did a demo, and I find very interesting the, 3 out of 5 combination, because it give you the possibility to screw up twice, basically.
Yeah.
Which I mean, if you screw up twice, then you probably shouldn't be working.
2 extra legs, right? We've built a system
where, it's enough.
Yeah, we've built a system to where the goal is that at the 3 of 5 level, you can mess up multiple times, and you can even recover on your own. Like, you don't need us for help recovering. At the 2 of 3 level, you would need us to help recover, but you can definitely at least screw up once. But we're trying to get away from this scenario to where you only have one device, and And then with that one key, you're potentially at major risk of loss.
Yeah, because basically if you lose, so you have 4 keys, right? Is that correct? That's how you start?
So at the key shield level, the most premium level, which is platinum and diamond, you have a 3 of 5. So you have 5 total keys. You only need 3 of them.
You hold 4 and 1 is held by CASA, right?
You hold 4 total keys and then CASA holds 1. At the 2 of 3 level, there are 3 total keys. You hold 2 and then CASA holds 1. And so there's the ability, if you screwed up, you would still be safe. Now, the interesting thing about, like, people currently know about about treasurers and ledgers have these seed phrases, and seed phrases really create what's almost a 1 of 2 situation, right? It's a single key, but you've got multiple copies of it. It's kind of a sharded situation, so you have multiple copies, and you only need 1 of those to be able to transact. Where we're leveling it up, your security, to where it's 2 of 3, so you have to have 2 pieces, but you also have more pieces, so you can lose 1 and still, still be okay.
Yeah, and I was talking with Eric Lombroso at Baltic County Badger. I asked him, like, we have an intrinsic problem. That was before, like, I heard about CASA. It's like, we have an intrinsic problem. Like, we have 1 private key, or even if you are able to do multi-signature, multiple private, but how do you make sure that you distribute those keys in a way that other people cannot reconstruct, but you are able to reconstruct when you need to? And most importantly, that you're not overguessing yourself, and then you're not able to remember how to rebuild your private key because you made it too complicated to rebuild it. So when I heard about CASA, I was like, here we go. So a solution for the problem I was thinking about. Because a lot of people lost Bitcoin because they forgot how to recreate the private key.
Yep.
Or they lost part of the private key because they divide the private key in, like, multiple pieces and things like that, which is a no. Basically, I think there is a talk by Andreas Antonopoulos on why you should not do that, and the probability is not actually decreasing, but is increasing the probability of losing your private key if you divide it in 12 pieces or whatever. So it's interesting, very exciting. So we briefly spoke about privacy last time, and we have seen some attempts in the last year, especially, to de-anonymize Bitcoin transaction. We did analytics tools and AI, other things like that. Is there any tools that you guys are developing at CASA to improve Bitcoin privacy, or you're thinking about to improve Bitcoin privacy? Like CoinJoin, Join Market. We heard about some projects going on.
Sure.
What's your take on that?
Well, first off, just managing your keys alone, right, starts to give you an element of, like, depending on who is controlling those keys, right, that is a privacy function, because we as a company have no clue who else in your family or in your work or whoever, how it's structured in your own kind of key setup. So first off, just managing keys gives you an element already of more control. But in terms of on-chain privacy, it's a really hard conversation. We are thinking about options. We've looked at CoinJoin, we've looked at other options, and it's a challenging conversation, because you have companies like, and actually Neutrino is in the news because they got acquired by Coinbase, but you have these companies like Chainalysis, like Neutrino, like I think Elliptic is one of the other ones, that their entire job is just indexing and tracking all these transactions. And they're working with law enforcement, they're working with exchanges and analytics providers, and they're mapping the entire network. And even with CoinJoin and even with some of these other tools, they have ways of bypassing and still kind of tracking, or at least tracking breaks out of these kind of mixers. And so it's not clear yet whether all of these tools definitely work. It's also possible that some of them, that you could get yourself mixed up with some other coins that, because everybody went through at the same time, that you somehow kind of mixed yourself with some other dirty marked coins, and then somehow your clean coins are now marked by Chainalysis or one of these other tools. So we're trying to be really careful with clients and with advising them to, depending on where you got your coins, if you mined them or if you bought them or where they came from, just being very careful and realizing that there is a very high likelihood and there's a lot of money behind kind of figuring out where people's coins are. And it's a challenge. I don't know if we'll ever get to the point to where it's like totally private. I hope we will. But I do think that some of the near-term tools might be overcome or may already be being overcome and are at risk. So because of some of these Chainalysis type companies. So I'm saying all of that just to say that it's not as easy of a discussion to just say, yeah, we're going to add every potential privacy enhancing feature. We want to add things that we know we're very confident are working, and we're very confident the amount of work to go through and use these is benefiting end users. And we're thinking about it beyond just this question of just privacy for privacy's sake and more privacy for overall safety's sake, and how long-term we can make sure the customers are the most safe and the most in control and the most sovereign. And that's kind of the end goal. So we are working on some things we are thinking about, and we've been looking at all the options out here, and we will offer more in the apps, but we're just being very deliberate about it is kind of the easiest answer.
Yeah, it's a tough goal, right? I think it's a good parallel is the same as the discussion around banning on social network, right? Where do you draw the line, and who decide where the line should be drawn? And it becomes very, very tough, I think. Okay, so let's talk about future developments. Which are the current application you guys that you can talk of that you guys are working on to build on Bitcoin? That are for you the most interesting.
Yeah, I think we start to see the edges of a tool set forming here, right? Where with basic key management and running a node, you can start to do some interesting things. And the easiest answer to this is just, we're looking to extend the capabilities of both, integrate the capabilities of both, and build just kind of this full stack tool set where everything integrates very nicely, integrates with providers outside of our basic tool sets to just make a very easy to use, cohesive experience. We are providing strong support to all of our customers, so we have a strong incentive to make sure that everything works seamlessly. But that's the easiest thing. On the side of like network resiliency, and you have mesh networks, and you have satellite connections, we have tested and we've looked at different options there. I think that there's we actually built one of the first. There's a satellite node that before we'd even announced the other node, one of our engineers actually built a node that connected to. It's not the Blockstream satellite network, but one of the other satellite networks. And so we've been experimenting with this stuff. I mean, that was over a year ago, right? We've been experimenting with all this stuff. And on the mesh network side, the GoTenna thing is like a good kind of marketing stunt around using GoTenna. Love the team there, but I really desperately want them to release their pro version. They have like a pro version that I think is only for law enforcement. And I really desperately want that to be available to like broader users. And honestly, until we have more professional, real mesh network, I mean, it's at a toy level, right? It's like it's not even useful, barely useful.
I got the basic one, and then there's this option to shout to see if there's anybody around. And
yeah, and how well is it working right now, right? Like it's an interesting experiment. But and that's why we haven't, we have experimented with it, and we've gotten some of the basics working, but it's not going to be workable on a strong level for a little while longer. And we are pushing. We want more mesh networking, more connectivity. Period. But there's definitely work to be done there. And I really want I don't know if it's a legal thing or what, but like getting GoTenna's pro version out and available would be like, that would be the ideal. And once we have that version, then we're really cruising, right? There's more. I mean, there's like, we can build more with the Lightning Network. I'm excited about a lot of the apps that are coming and things that people have released. And we've been thinking about kind of broader applications, how you rebuild some broader consumer applications with some of this technology. And then, multi-sig, making multi-sig available to everyone, making it a lot easier to integrate and with other products. There's a lot to be done. So I'm excited about the year now that we've got this kind of basic foundation out. It'll be a lot easier. And yeah, I mean, I think that the intersection of, I think if you think of this as a new computing wave, then that's where things get interesting, is how do we rebuild old paradigms and what can we do that's new, taking the old way or the old kind of consumer apps and rebuilding them in this new architecture.
Cool. And what is the best channel for people that want to invest in CASA or, just work with CASA would be?
Yeah, totally. I mean, you can go to keys.casa directly. You can sign up for a silver account now. It's totally free. You can get access to the key management app, Keymaster. It's on both app stores. And you get the mobile app and you get multi-sig now. So that's pretty awesome. The multi-sig 203 is not fully rolled out to everyone. We'll be rolling it out to everyone over the next 2 weeks, but it is available, and that is at that free tier. It's also the $300 tier, which is the gold level that is the package. It's basically like, full sovereignty in a box. You've got key management, you've got a node, you've got some other, you have a hardware wallet included, all of that in one package. And then you've got the really high-end level, which is, and whether you're kind of like a pure individual or you're a team and you have like, even if it's your lawyer, your accountant, et cetera, that kind of differentiates which level you go to at the higher end level. But you can go to keys.casa, get set up. You can reach out to me, Jeremy at team.casa, if you get any questions, or we also have just the typical support channels that help at team.casa. And then follow us on Twitter. We've got a ton. We're always pumping out a lot of stuff. We've got some more announcements coming out this week. So that's just at CASA HODL, HODL is on Twitter.
And lastly, like a lot of people joining, you might be interested to join CASA. So do you have any position opening up? Maybe they're not system engineers.
We're doing a bunch of hiring this year on the engineering side, support side, just across the board, sales. So we've already, we're a bigger team than most people think. We're 20 plus. And we were only like 3 or 4 earlier last year. And so we've scaled pretty fast, and we're going to continue pretty fast growth this year. So it's great. I mean, it's a fun team. We're all distributed. Location doesn't matter. It's just like being the best in the world at what you're doing and wanting to contribute to this mission.
Cool. All right. Some few last fun remarks, and then we can let you go. So we always do, like we did it with Giacomo, the top 3 all favorite books. So I have to ask you, what are I see the books on the back. I see a lot of books on the back.
Yeah, I'm a big reader. I studied political philosophy. Even when I was younger, I lots of reading. So I have a stack of books back there. I've got a bunch more on tables over here that you can't quite see. But I did pull a few. I'll show you a couple. So favorite books. I'm a huge on the fiction side, and I am actually a big fan of fiction generally, just as a kind of structural framework to frame our views on the current world. And so a big sci-fi fan, but Neil Stephenson is probably like my favorite author, period. So just about any of his books, I've got like you can see the full Baroque Cycle series back there, and Cryptonomicon, Snow Crash. Like I've read all that stuff and just love that stuff. So in terms of like a nonfiction, so this one is 1,000 Years of Nonlinear History. This is probably one of my most recommended books, or my most gifted books, I'd say, to people. It's by this guy, this philosopher Manuel DeLanda, and it is about nonlinear systems, cybernetics and nonlinear systems. And he basically just traces a few different types of systems, geological systems, biological systems, and economic systems through their histories, but does it in a nonlinear approach. So the idea is that our minds right now, at least, this isn't necessarily that we're naturally built this way, but at least right now we bucket things into these linear timelines, linear stories, and we think of everything in terms of it just like connects and align. And that's just not the way that the world actually works. The world is much more cyclical. It's much more chaotic. And this is like just an excellent book in terms of framing a lot of that and connecting a lot of the similarities between geological systems and other systems that you would just never see. And then the last one that I always recommend is 0 to 1. So Peter Thiel's 0 to 1, just in terms of building startups and understanding what to do and what not to do in business. I think of that book as more of a philosophy book than it is a business book. And it's a really important book because it frames this problem of business not as a, hey, let's just go out and make money, but hey, like what is the actual value? You want to create these kind of monopoly conditions to where you're the best in the world at one thing and you're able to really execute. And you're really thinking about, as a company, as a person, what your highest value is to the community, to your company, and how you can contribute best. And I think a lot of people waste time because they end up getting distracted and not just doing the thing that they are 100% the best in the world at. And so I think that book is incredibly important for just framing some of those things and really driving what it means to continue to grow the economy.
Yeah, I also read 0 to 1, I think was one of my favorite, very interesting book for people that haven't read. Definitely it's a good read. I'm recently into the Nassim Taleb. I don't know if you know about him. So I'm reading about the Black Swan.
Yeah.
Similar to the concept of non-linearity, but more about.
Yeah, definitely. My favorite Taleb book is actually the Bed of Procrustes. So he's got this book of aphorisms and definitely another one, just fitting models inappropriately and a bunch of insights there.
I got the full stack, so it's one of the 4 or 5 books that is part of the stack. So I'll let you know once I'm reading it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And next question: any project, crypto or Bitcoin related, that you are or were interested? Actually, any project outside Bitcoin that you are or were interested, and why?
What does that even mean? Are there projects outside of Bitcoin? I mean, I think it's.
I'll take that as an answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we are a Bitcoin first company. We prioritize Bitcoin because it is the most important project in the space. I think that a lot of other people recognize that there are going to be other technologies, but it is like in the early days of the fast growth of Google and Facebook, of people being like, oh, well, maybe there'll be other countries that have social networks. And there were some interesting bets that came out of that. So you had like Orkut down in South America, and you've had, WeChat and others emerge and Southeast Asia. And so there have been some bets that work. And that's in a case of like Facebook versus Orkut. There's still on the social networking side, but Facebook is still a dominant player. And I think that from that lens, I do see some other projects that are interesting. I mean, obviously we're supporting Lightning. We got to know the Blockstack guys pretty closely, and like their project, and they're doing decentralized DNS, and they have some more stuff coming out this year. And they've been pegged for the longest time. They've been one of the best the leading non-financial applications on top of Bitcoin. They sync to Bitcoin. So there are some interesting projects, but I think that what we're pushing towards is we want people thinking more in a like just a pure distributed peer-to-peer fashion, not just in an on-chain compute fashion. And so a lot of the interesting projects are left to come if we do our job right. And then so I'll leave it at that.
Cool. Last one, and then I'll let you go.
Cool.
Any favorite quote, Bitcoin related, either Satoshi or not Bitcoin related, that you want to share with the people here?
Yeah. So I would probably, for this one, I'd probably just say HODL. I think the whole HODL meme and term and everything is hilarious. But it's also become like a core part of just like commitment. And I think there's something interesting about like the admission of, there's a lot of like subtext in that term that kind of goes unanalyzed. One is this admission of the kind of chaos of markets, and we're frequently thinking that we can control every single thing. And so there's this realization that I'm just going to HODL through the chaos. The second thing is that there's like kind of long-term commitment or long-term planning or thinking and really analyzing whether you actually are committed or whether you do actually believe in the project. So it actually kind of filters out people that are kind of latching onto Bitcoin for more short-term reasons and filters them from the kind of longer-term group. So it's actually done this kind of self-selection mechanism for the Bitcoin community. And then the other thing around it is just the story of kind of how it came about is hilarious. And this person just posting on the channel. One thing that I bring up commonly is that there was actually the first time I kind of saw it, and I kind of thought it was a misspelling of the one of the Winklevoss twins was doing was on Reddit and was doing an interview about a month before HODL became a thing. And people asked one of the Winklevoss twins, they said, you know, what do you, if the market changes, what are you doing? And what would you do? And would you sell? And if we went high, if we went low? And his response was hold, was HOLD, hold Spartans hold, right? So he was basically saying that like, I'm hodling, I'm holding because Spartans hold, and it was the same attitude of HODL. And I don't know if that like somehow someone read that and that got kind of, because people were like, oh yeah, Spartans hold, Spartans hold, Spartans hold. And then a month later, we get the HODL meme that pops out, right, on the Bitcoin forums. And so, you know, there's, maybe it's just purely synchronicity, but there's some like nuance of the patterning that like happened right there in November and December of that year. That's really interesting.
Okay, we're gonna get some questions from the chat.
Cool.
And then we'll let you go.
Cool.
So Dream Man is asking, I'm a big fan of CASA. Overall, I would legitimately be interested in a plug and play multi-signature loan service, but I would never effectively trust my keys with a third party.
Yep.
So he's a big fan of CASA. He likes the idea of multi-sig plus node plus Lightning Network service in one package, but he's not a great fan of having a third-party provider.
Got it. Well, that's good news because that's how we're built, right? Because you control your own keys. That's the whole point. I mean, yeah, we're built so that on the key management side, we do hold one key, but you hold the majority, and there's nothing we can ever do. There was a principle we have in our principles about can't be evil. That we are there to kind of assist and support, but never to control and never to steer. And from that lens, we can't do anything. From the lens of the actual device, the device is in your home, it's in your full control. You hold the key, it's only on your device. Nobody can touch it, we can't touch it. We've ripped out all the analytics tools and anything else that was common in kind of devices built in other contexts. And so you really do have full key control. And that's, it's really important. So we are, I will say too, that, our whole goal is to take more and more of what we're doing to push it to the edges so that it's fully in the control of the end user. And one day, a lot of even like the software systems that we run and the servers that we run will hopefully just be a set of servers that our customers run themselves, right? So we're not controlled as a centralized party whatsoever. We're not able to, even if we went down today. So we actually already also are built in a way to where with the 3 of 5 key shield, at least, we're set up so that you get this sovereign email. So even if we were to disappear tomorrow, you still have full access to everything because you have the full set of keys. And you don't have to have us, but we just make your life easier by using the interfaces that we've built. But we're pushing further and further to a world to where you control everything, you have access to everything, and you will even run everything on your CASA node and on, distributed across other CASA nodes is the goal.
Cool. That answers it. Any other questions from the chat before we close? Doesn't look like. +1. Okay, Trooper, go ahead.
Cool.
Okay, so the 2 out of 3 multi-signature solution with closed source CASA keymaster is, in my opinion, misleading. Will the mobile app be open sourced?
Okay. Interesting, misleading. I'm curious in what way it's misleading. So I'll just, without knowing exactly what he's referring to, I mean, I think that we recognize that on the market, you have several tools, several open source tools that will enable you to do some basic multi-sig. So for a lot of people, a lot of engineers, a lot of developers are able to use some of the existing tools, including Electrum Wallet, with a Trezor ledger and set up some basic multi-sig. The thing that hasn't existed, which is with the gap that we're filling, is for the kind of average person that wants to get started, that's not technical, that wants a fast and easy solution, that they do want it to be multi-sig, they do want to have control of their keys, and from that perspective, like that's what we pushed out first. Now the question of whether we open source mobile app is still up in the air. We've looked at it. It's a little more complicated than kind of what's being pointed to there, because it's not as simple as saying, oh, like, can open source the app, let me check this, because what happens is we have to build the app and we have to put a version of the app on the App Store, right? So just because there's one version that is open source on, you can more directly, I'll say this, you can more directly check the code that is on your CASA node and compare it to the code that is on the open source repository than you would ever be able to check the app an open source app that is posted that would be then running on your phone, right? But one of the challenges that could come out if we do go down that path is that someone could take that code, they could compile it, and they could put up fake copies of our app on the App Store. And that creates even a worse security position. So Electrum, exists. We are allowing, so right now, the current version of the 203 allows you to have single key on the phone, which is stored only on your phone. Doesn't touch our servers. It's stored only on your phone. It's a single Trezor ledger, which again, you have solely in your possession. And then there's the recovery key that we hold. So under that scheme, you still have full key control. And then, for people that are using this, we are planning to get to the point to where, and we could launch this quicker, but we just think it's better to do the device key first. But there will be the option of just using 2 Trezors instead of the device key and a Trezor. So, but yeah, I mean, it's again, we've thought through the security model in detail and happy to continue to address that. But for what we're specifically focused on, which is for people that have never touched multi-sig, that aren't fast or aren't technical enough to go use Electrum, this is the best, easiest solution to get them started. And it's not built to manage millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. It's built as an entry-level piece. And then when you get closer to the 3 of 5 multi-sig, you get even better security, and that's what we recommend people use mostly on the long term.
Cool. So we're getting a little bit over with time. Cool. So that's all I wanted to cover for today. Thanks again, Jeremy, for joining us. Hope to see you in London again soon.
Yep.
And to have this again in the future. For the people that are watching us, subscribe to the Bitcoin channel. The button is below. For those in London, sign up to Bitcoin and Blockchain Meetup. Again, the link is below in the description. And for those on Twitter, on Telegram, again, link paste below to follow me and to join our chat. We have a Telegram chat with all the Bitcoin and Blockchain London members. So good afternoon to you, Jeremy, and good night, everyone.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Ciao.